Right.
All right. I think we got a good group of people in here, so I'd love to jump in here. Let's start with Carl. You want to introduce yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah, you bet. Hey, everybody, I'm Carl Segal. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Reef, headquartered down in Miami, and we are in the neighborhood kitchen business. So what that means, we'll get into much more in the conversation today, but we're super excited to be part of this. Thanks, Matt, for having me. Really do appreciate that, and looking forward to some good discussion.
Awesome. Thanks so much for making the time. Kristen?
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. I'm Kristen Barnett, Zuul's Director of Strategy. Zuul is a ghost kitchen company. We operate multi-operator ghost kitchen facilities and also have our own technology component, which we will be discussing on this panel.
Okay, last but definitely not least, Mr. Alex Canter.
Thank you. Alex Canter, CEO and co-founder of Ordermark. Originally grew up as the fourth generation of Canter's Deli, which is a very famous old school Jewish deli here in LA. And now Ordermark powers delivery for thousands of restaurants across the country, aggregating all the different ordering streams into a single device. And doing a lot of work in the virtual restaurant space as well. So excited for the conversation.
That's right. You got NextBite, and NextBite, we were just talking, launched Hotbox by Wiz. So that leads me to my first question. And honestly, I wrote all these questions thinking, okay, who's going to answer what? But the reality is that each of you is pretty well equipped to answer all of these questions. So it's a free for all. So just jump in as you see fit. So I'm not going to call on anyone, but what are the key drivers?
No hand raising either. Just going for it.
Yeah, just go attack each other. What are the key drivers of a successful virtual brand? So like what are, is it something where you have to go and create a single item and build it around that menu? Or is it something that should be more curated? Or what are some of the best practices that lend itself to a virtual brand, starting with anybody?
Well, I'll jump in. I think that when we're talking about a virtual brand, and at Reef, we have brands that we've created. That's how we stood up our entire platform. We've got about 100 kitchen vessels right now in 20 major MSAs across the US and Canada on our neighborhood hubs. And when we started, we really focused on a curated collection of items such as wings and menus around wings, or burgers, or an Asian concept. So we thought that was kind of the best way to go at it, where we featured a couple of focal items and then some supporting actors and actresses to keep it going. And it was a curated collection. And we've got a whole new version of curated virtual brands coming out in the next couple of weeks that we're super excited about.
I'll just add on to that. I think going back 3-4 years ago, when some of the first delivery only facilities were starting to open up with cloud kitchens and Kitchen United and some of the earlier facilities, I think the brands that worked best in a delivery format were brands that already had a huge following and a presence and a name, and consumers that already were in love with the brand. It was a little easier to just launch concepts and menus that nobody had any idea what they were, and it would just experience volume and success on the platforms. But now that those platforms are getting very crowded with a lot of delivery only brands and apps, that you got to do a little bit more than just have a focused menu around a specific item to stand out and perform well. You got to really have a consumer marketing component to the brand and promote not just on the online ordering company apps themselves, but also directly.
Right. Building on that too, I couldn't agree more. Really, virtual brands, I feel like on the current platforms, are built around really like search terms and meeting a specific moment or, a specific cuisine. That was kind of phase one, right? Now we see obviously the importance of the consumer marketing angle. For us at Zuul, we take a slightly different approach, since we're creating virtual brands with our Ghost Kitchen members that are then going to be featured on the Zuul market. we have our own proprietary technology and virtual food hall experience where we're partnering with buildings and offices to offer consolidated multi-brand deliveries. So for us, what we're looking for in terms of a successful virtual brand is actually the curation of the food hall, making sure that we have a robust and diverse selection of cuisines so that we can meet the needs of a group. So when we're working with our brands to identify what actually might make the most sense, we're also optimizing for that part of the experience.
Can you give us some examples, Kristen, of some of the virtual brands that you guys worked on launching in your virtual food hall?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one virtual brand that we created ourselves and launched immediately, which was called Snack Committee. And what we aimed to do with Snack Committee was really meet a very targeted need of some of the offices that we were working with in our early private beta. And this was totally centered around basically the gaps around the restaurant's existing menus for snacks, afternoon items, canned lattes, the things that office workers might normally go back and exit the office for to get a coffee break, but is made a lot more difficult with COVID, the screening, and limited elevator capacity. So for us, it was really thinking through what might someone want to add on to the meal or have as a snack for later, and we came up with Snack Committee.
Totally, yeah. I think it's interesting to use the virtual brands as a use case to like increase the average order value when you're ordering across a lot of different brands in a kind of virtual food hall setting. So that's pretty cool. Carl, I wanted to kick it back to you to talk about, I know you guys have like some proprietary tech you've built to identify where brands will succeed. How do you see, data playing a role in shaping what we eat, A/B testing, and kind of that analogy to the software data layer behind all the food we're consuming?
I think Carl might be frozen.
Oh, no.
We lost Carl.
All right, well,
Did we freeze?
Oh, there you are.
Hey
He's
there.
like, wow, he's really thinking about this one.
I had to just freeze myself for a second so I could really contemplate what you asked me. But I'm going to also have to ask you to ask me again.
Sorry about that.
Totally locked up.
Yeah, I guess my question was, how I know that you guys have some proprietary tech at Reef that is mining data on what people are looking for.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about, in the future or currently how data is playing a role in shaping what we're going to eat, and A/B testing different concepts and what that kind of looks like at scale?
Yeah. Let me start by saying we have some amazing tech that we've created to help us get at not just what people are interested in eating based on what they're eating and how they're rating the food that they're getting and the availability of certain types of cuisines, as well as types of brands, such as local brands or national players in a particular market. But we're able to actually use this to help to determine what the most appropriate type of cuisine is, or price point, or whether someone's looking for something at a local level or not. So we can dial that into the actual neighborhood hub and the neighborhood that we serve. So it really helps us to get zeroed in. And just to be clear, because I didn't really go into much of this at the front end, but we have about 5,000 of these neighborhood hubs across the US and Canada, on which we're putting kitchen vessels. And the vessel itself is able to hold, 6, could be up to 8 brands inside, so that we're actually able to run multiple cuisine types, because unlike a traditional ghost kitchen format, we're actually licensing the brands and we're operating the brands ourselves. So we're able to use this technology to help us really say, okay, in this particular area, there's a gap of Asian food, and we're going to put an Asian brand in there. And maybe it's an Asian brand that we create, or maybe there's a local relevant brand to that community that we serve that is amazing, that we can put into that kitchen vessel and then, serve it up to the people who are in that neighborhood right around that particular vessel itself. So the technology helps us to dial in on who the customer is, where they're going, and what they're looking for. So it makes it really easy for us to kind of dial that in. And I think as we go forward, we rely more and more on the data as it continues to grow, the more communities that we serve.
Alex, I know you and I talked about this the other week when we were doing a story about you. Do you agree that data is everything, or do you think that there's also this other kind of approach that's more just intuitive and instinctual?
I think data obviously plays a big role here, but one thing I do want to mention is that from our experience, what we're finding is that it's not about where the gaps in cuisine are in the markets. Like, it just so happens that in a suburb of Utah, there's no Indian restaurants. It doesn't matter that there isn't Indian restaurants, though. It means that there's not demand for Indian food in that suburb. So it's not about taking brands to areas where they don't exist. If there's a gap in the cuisine type, it's more about finding what works well in specific markets and doubling down on that and picking up on trends that are happening maybe in places like New York and LA, San Francisco, that are that tend to spread across the country a couple of years later, and helping advance that forward. I think that's really how data could be powerful here. But I think even if you know that a certain cuisine type is selling well in a specific market, it's what's nice about virtual restaurants is that you can iterate and split test very quickly for a very low cost. You don't need to spend a bunch of money to launch a concept or a brand. You can actually launch the same wing concept under 3 different names and figure out which one's performing well and run with it.
Yep.
Is that what you did with? Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
No, I was just going to add on, Alex. I think it's a great point that you bring up, and both in terms of the A/B testing as well as on the data side. You're right. There are definitely communities that have no interest in eating Indian, so you want to steer clear of that for sure. But it also gives you the opportunity to understand through other data points if there's an opportunity to bring something to a community when they're missing that particular item. So it does help us on both sides. It helps us steer clear of the iceberg that's below the surface that we can't see, but it also helps us to know how to target.
Agreed. Yeah.
But how do you really know where the untapped demand is if you don't own the search data?
That's why you got to partner with Google. No, I think what we're about to see happen in the coming years is the way that people are interacting with restaurants is going to live in so many different ways. I think, like, you look at the market right now, there's like the Uber Eats and DoorDashes of the world that are dominating and attracting a lot of consumer demand. But I think seriously, a lot of the search companies, the Googles, the Amazons, Facebook, a lot of other types of players are going to start to move into this space because they actually know what's being searched for. That's why Yelp and OpenTable and all these restaurant tech companies are starting to get into online ordering because they have a lot of data to suggest what's going to work and what's going to perform better in certain markets.
Interesting. Kristen, any thoughts on data and how it relates to Zuul?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with Alex's point earlier about the ability to A/B test. So, obviously we're focused on more of a closed and managed marketplace model. So there are different dynamics that we're looking at. For us, it's understanding if there's someone among one of our partnerships that maybe wasn't utilizing the partnership for a reason. However, how do we understand? It's kind of the similar question you're asking around identification of untapped demand. We are then launching brands and able to iterate really quickly. And that's a key part of our platform, is just how easily it is for us to actually spin up these virtual brands, change the colors, change the photography, and understand what the response might be. We can optionally display a brand to a certain partnership, test it, take it down, relaunch it, push it somewhere else. And that's the type of testing that I think is required to understand when there's something that might be really popular and really take off.
Okay, speaking of takeoff, I want to do something that I did in the last panel, which was put us all into a time machine. So we're going to go into the time machine. Ready, set, go. We're going 2 years into the future. It's 2022. Okay, here we are. We made it. Cool. We're still here. So 2 years from now, well, actually now, because we're here, right?
Yeah.
Will we see more virtual brands come from physical brick and mortar restaurants with excess capacity, which we know most restaurants have, or will we see them from ghost kitchens? And we can say nebulously anything is a ghost kitchen from something, as long as it isn't a physical brick and mortar restaurant from our childhood and earlier adulthood. Whatever we knew as a restaurant in one category, and whatever is a ghost kitchen or a trailer or anything in another bucket.
Well, isn't the idea that using, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a question to Matt, because I think what I heard you say was restaurants that are taking some of their space and turning it into a ghost kitchen, using some underutilized corner of their back, or maybe because their capacity demands are down in the dining room. Isn't that very similar to to Kristen, what you're doing in terms of actually purchasing real estate, building out a kitchen? You're still in the brick and mortar space. It's just different because one's in the back of a restaurant that is underutilized. The other is in the space that you're actually going out and seeking, as opposed to what we're doing, which is really a mobility platform. I think of that as quite different, right?
Yeah, maybe we could segment it 3 different ways. Okay, so we'll say pure play ghost kitchens like Zuul, Cloud Kitchens, Kitchen United in one bucket, which is, I would say, a new restaurateur coming to market and saying, I can't do this out of my brick and mortar. I need a dedicated space. We have restaurants in another category that are, maybe not as fortunate to have been able to survive through this period and needed the extra cash flow. And then the third bucket, I guess, is Reef, which is dedicated mobility.
Carl, you created
platform.
your own bucket.
Right. Well, we have. We have actually created an entire category, which is pretty different. So I'll stop and let you two answer that first, and then I can talk a little bit about the Reef platform and the mobility, because that's where we obviously are betting. We see things going for a number of different reasons. So, Kristen, Alex.
Speaking to the real estate side of this, we're looking at a macro environment where we're about to see an excess amount of kitchen inventory on the market, just a number of second-gen spaces. So I think this is a question of how restaurants will adapt to what has happened way back 2 years ago in 2020, right? But thinking through, whether this shift will mean that virtual brands become a more commonplace aspect of a restaurant's business plan. I think that we've seen a lot of blending of traditional sales channel definitions or distinctions, where we saw a number of restaurants obviously adopt, grocery style sales, utilizing the last mile logistics similar to regular delivery, and obviously continued adoption of virtual brands. So then it really becomes a question on the real estate front of whether we believe more ghost kitchen players are going to enter into the market, creating more opportunities for restaurants that seek out opening a ghost kitchen within that type of infrastructure. And it's going to be that dynamic that I think drives the proliferation of virtual brands in either one direction or the other.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, I think what's happening right now is like the e-commerce phase of the restaurant industry, where brick and mortar physical locations are all forced to become digital businesses. And the acceleration of that, I would say, 10 years worth of shift in consumer behavior has happened in a matter of months right now. And because people are getting used to this new format, I think more and more orders are going to originate digitally moving forward, which was already heading in that direction, but we just saw a huge leap forward in that sense. And as a result, I think you look at the 800,000 brick and mortar restaurant business in the US, it's already oversaturated even in pre-COVID days. It was hard enough to even survive a year or two with a physical restaurant. And I think it's going to become even harder. And so I expect seating capacity to go down, kitchen space to go up. And I think just the amount of excess capacity and inventory of restaurants is going to allow more virtual brands to be run out of existing kitchens versus in a separate facility that is designed specifically for delivery, unless somebody can go deploy tens of thousands of them across the country, like a Reef.
Right, and that's where what we do is quite different, because we're not only talking about virtual brands, we're also talking about known brands. Whether they're a local chef that has something happening, to a national player, to a regional brand that wants to use this platform as a way to expand in addition to their own brick and mortar locations. So that's something that I think for us at Reef is a huge opportunity, because we're in the world of both virtual brands that we've created, where we do have, to your point earlier, Kristen, we've got 3-4 different wing brands that we're comparing and A/B testing and seeing, what does better. Burger brands, same way. And yet we also have, David Chang's Fuku on the platform with us, and we've got BurgerFi with us, and we're getting ready in New York to launch a local hero there, Jack's wife Frida, that's a beloved brand in Manhattan, for example. So lots of things going on where people say, well, I'm not really sure what's happening, and I want to double down, and I want to make sure that if I'm running a restaurant, that I can continue to run it, but I also want to expand across town, or to a different part of the region, or across the country. And so the mobility aspect of Reef, that we're building kitchen vessels and deploying them, and have the maximum proximity to our customer, being just blocks away quite often, and the ability to move things around as we need to, or as the brand wants, is a whole different spin on all this. And really, there's a part of it that I just have to say, because Alex, you brought it up. Pre-COVID, I mean, I've been in the restaurant business my entire career. There was just a glut of restaurants on the market. Trying to find real estate was brutal. Trying to find a contractor to build out a space was tough. We were all competing with banks for corner locations and just craziness. So I think this is going to thin that out a bit, and we're going to be in a place where, yeah, the restaurant will still always have a place, but platforms like what we're all doing in our own ways are absolutely here to stay. And COVID was simply a catalyst for all this.
One quick additional comment to that is, I think we're also going to see, just like we saw in retail, where there were digital first brands that ended up finding success and then opening physical flagship locations, or
Yep.
I think we could very well see what happened with Warby Parker and Allbirds and all these companies that started digital, and then now they're actually in malls, and you can go physically buy in their stores. I foresee digital first brands that can potentially find success and then open physical locations too, so that there's that mixed audience, multi-channel approach.
Alex, we're the exclusive mobility partner of C3 brands, from LA, and they've got Crispy Rice and Umami Burger and Sam's Crispy Chicken, among a few other things that they're working on. And to that exact point, some of the brands were born digitally, and they're digitally native brands, and we see them take off with amazing success right out of the gate. I mean, because of their presence on social media and the following that these brands have. And others like Umami, that started out as a brick and mortar first, but now is really migrating towards digital platform. There are pros and cons to that, that side of it as well. So it's really cool when we see these digitally native brands, start to come up, and what that means for growth and for the marketplace as a whole.
So there's obviously a lot of complexity and finesse that comes around taking either an existing brick and mortar restaurant like a Michael's Genuine or a Fuku, or any kind of regional chef presence, and scaling that, or even something like Hotbox by Wiz. I'd love to hear from both of you, maybe starting with Alex, kind of about what are some of the biggest challenges of scaling your concept across, I don't know, thousands of restaurants in your case, and kind of templatizing that for a brick and mortar to go and like replicate that. Because, you know, and I'm also curious of at what point does a brand say, I'm not comfortable having a mom and pop cook my food?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure, Carl, you're experiencing this more than anyone, but when someone is willing to license their brand name to you, they're putting their baby in your hands. Like, there's so much pressure to get quality control correct.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And especially, you know, you talk about local heroes like the restaurant you're working with in New York, or brands that are trying to expand their delivery footprint to other areas. You know, as much as people want to do that, they do want like a serious amount of quality control going in to make sure that it's the same experience happening whether you're ordering from the actual restaurant or a licensed version of it. I can tell you when we tried to license Canter's Deli to different groups that were running casinos and hotels, we were 0 for 3. We tried multiple times in different formats, limited menus, and every time that we did it, it just didn't work out the way that we intended it to, because we weren't there overseeing it, and it's hard to get that kind of cuisine correct, and it's very niche. I would say that there are specific types of cuisine that are easier to replicate and scale and do that with. And it does come down to amazing training, secret shopping, quality control measures, physically putting someone in each of the locations to make sure that everyone in the restaurant is trained up, and there's a lot that's being invested into getting that right.
You should come and work with us at Reef, Alex. That was beautifully put, man. Spot on. It's a huge undertaking, and we have because we license brands and operate them, we have a massive operating team of some real pros. I mean, a team of culinarians that do exactly what Alex was describing, which was to help these brands with their babies literally decide what's the right thing to put on there. How do you pare that menu down so that, number one, we can execute it consistently and with excellence across the country, and really give people kind of the greatest hits of that particular brand, because you can't do the full menu, right? So how do you really keep it focused? And that's a big piece of it. So building up that infrastructure is super important. And the partnership really has to be there to earn the right to grow their brand over time. And the brand has to do their part too by supporting us, in that growth, making sure that we understand exactly how to execute their recipes, supporting us around the training. I mean, it's a true partnership, and we've, we're off to the races with it. So it's definitely a different way to help brands expand, but it's one that when you get it right, it's absolutely amazing.
So I want to kick it back to Kristen, because we haven't heard from you in a little bit, and we're missing Kristen. So who do you think needs these virtual secondary, tertiary concepts coming out of the kitchen more? Is it people like your tenants that are in ghost kitchens? They're trying to make it work. And I want to caveat this by saying most of your tenants in your ghost kitchens are actual brick and mortar restaurants looking to expand.
That's correct.
Or is it restaurants who are stuck with vacant dining rooms that need extra revenue? You could also look at it from the other side of licensing, but just to keep it simple,
right?
Who needs it more? Is it the restaurateur or the ghost kitchen entrepreneur or restaurateur?
It really depends on, obviously, the structure of the business model for, the restaurateur with the dining room that's sitting empty, or the ghost kitchen itself. I mean, really, it is just a numbers game. Why we're really excited about what we're doing with the virtual brands with our current Zuul members is giving them, another sales opportunity in addition to however they've constructed the rest of their business with their brick and mortar location. In terms of, someone with a vacant dining room, I mean, absolutely a virtual brand makes sense to try to recapture some of the sales that are lost now from walk-in being wiped out nearly overnight. The key difference for us, though, is that, we look at a lot of these virtual brands are being launched across the third parties, which, still charge pretty high commissions. And so why we're excited about the potential of launching them through our ghost kitchens is because we're launching them through our marketplace, which has a different financial profile and drives better margin demand to the restaurants. So, I would argue that they need it because for them, it's a way to actually make more money.
That's a really good point, and maybe we should talk a little bit about the marketplaces and kind of the role of the marketplaces and scaling it. Like we've seen Grubhub take a very active role with Robert Earl and his group of concepts that he's cooking out of his kitchens, but also they've expanded it to thousands. I've found thousands of restaurants on the Grubhub platform selling Taiga Bites. So they've also helped with that expansion and giving that data, and also sometimes even bringing those celebrities to the table, bringing those deals to the table. But I'm
Right.
kind of curious, maybe, and then I know, Carl, you guys are working on helping some of your restaurant partners build some sort of their own ordering. I guess, how do you see that whole constellation of ordering across the major platforms alongside direct channel and maybe even multi-tenant ordering?
I think that the way things are going, we all experience what it's like to have, the major platforms, in that middle zone between you and your customer, right? And it can be very, very frustrating, it can be very, very challenging. And the way I see this going, and certainly the way we're planning for this is to have, an omni-channel program that allows people to use the main platforms, of course, but also to go direct to either someone like Reef that is going to have a virtual food hall to choose from, because we have so many different brands operating on a particular neighborhood hub out of various kitchen vessels. We can perform sort of the same thing, allowing them to order lots of different things. And by the way, including, some grocery items, some convenience items, those kinds of things as well. Soon to be alcohol. And I also, see very clearly that, and we're starting to do this with some of our partners, if you go to the website for a particular restaurant, and the restaurant's located in the southeast corner of town, and we've got kitchen vessels operating in the northwest corner, they can go to that restaurant's website, and if they live in the northwest, they're going to actually place the order on the restaurant site, but it's going to get fulfilled by us. And so lots of different ways that this is moving going forward, and we're just trying to get out of that single stream of it's all about Grubhub or DoorDash or Uber Eats or Postmates.
Does the aggregator king, Mr. Canter, want to comment on the role of direct versus constellation of marketplace?
I mean, I always promote a omni-channel approach to this. I think every restaurant, as a base layer, should have their own direct ordering channel through their own website, and exist on as many third-party online ordering sites as you can be on. The reality is that most, especially mom and pop restaurants or smaller restaurant groups, don't have the marketing budgets or teams to drive all the traffic through their own channel. A lot of brands have held out as long as they can, and then they end up realizing that as soon as they give in and put themselves on Uber Eats and DoorDash, like their volume just goes up like 5x or 10x. Even in my own family's restaurant, we were on 14 different online ordering services. One of them was ChowNow, which was our own white label ordering platform on our website. But of our whole takeout and delivery business, ChowNow orders only represented 4% of our total online business. Everything else was happening on all the third-party marketplaces. So, in a perfect world, we'd want everyone going directly through us. We don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to spend to change consumer behavior and drive people to apps and give away a bunch of free food to get people to download the app. So I think it's all about having a mixed strategy and trying to figure out more and more ways to to target your own consumers, and it's an important piece to it. You got to have a nice product mix balance, but you can't ignore third-party online ordering.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question before. Sorry, Kristen, did you want to say something?
No, I'm just saying I agree with that. And I think actually the point that you brought up around not having like the corporate team with huge marketing budgets to actually drive everyone to native. I mean, that's a very unique case if it exists among the restaurant industry, with the long tail of operators really just running it themselves and looking for easy solutions to drive sales. So that was definitely part of the reason why we created the Zuul Market. It's a near native way for us to drive demand to the restaurants, but leveraging our team and the Zuul infrastructure to actually help operators that might not normally have the spend to allocate. So completely agree with what you said there, Alex.
I guess, yeah, I want to get into the Q&A in a second, but I guess, my final question that I've just come up with as I've been listening to you guys is, more and more people seem to be following along this convenience route of what GoPuff is doing and augmenting their restaurant menu with an offering from, a bunch of things to stock up on. And my personal belief is that that's because it's going to drive higher AOVs to make the deliveries profitable at some day, ideally through that kind of owned and operated channel. I guess, what are we going to see going forward as far as how someone's going to be ordering a sandwich from their favorite restaurant that's coming from the micromobility platform, but also getting a bottle of their favorite whiskey alongside that, or maybe this idea of getting a baked good from their favorite bakery and just kind of having everything kind of in this one block. Kind of in the early days, we've seen cloud kitchens get into this and then kind of pull back. But what will this look like in the future? Maybe starting with Carl.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's happening now. I mean, the fact that we have grocery and convenience channels as part of our platform business allows us to, sell you a Fuku chicken sandwich, for example, and you can add on a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream if you want. And if you need diapers or something like that, you can get that too, right? So it gives you the ability to add to the order. Now, obviously, there's some convenience items that we're not going to necessarily stock in a kitchen vessel or in a grocery vessel or a convenience vessel, but cross marketing on menus, so that if you have a brand that, let's say, doesn't really have much for dessert, but you want to feature, some amazing cookies from, Milk Bar, or you want to have a terrific ice cream choice from Van Leeuwen, or you want to, add to it, just like, wow, I can get a completely different brand, a well-known brand or a premium brand, or maybe even not a premium brand, even if it's something like, M&Ms or whatever, which are great after a meal. You can add that right on, and then that comes with it. So we see a lot of that, and as I mentioned, getting into the alcohol space, the same kind of thing there. And if you think about it, it's an age old thing in restaurants. Certainly in the fast casual and the QSR space, right? They want to sell you something, but they want you to get a drink and get an order of fries with it, so they bundle it together. I mean, it's that same concept of, hey, go for this stuff, but then here are some other things that you can add on, and we're already coming to your house or to your office or whatever, and so here you go. And it's a great way to build more brand awareness around some of the brands that we carry, as well as increase the check.
Yes, building on that, I mean, couldn't agree more. So much of that was behind the reason we created Snack Committee. It's really looking at meeting occasion as an opportunity to move more product to these customers that actually might have logical needs beyond just the singular item they're looking to eat in that moment. So there's definitely a massive opportunity when it comes to dynamics on just the economics, increasing AOV. But then the other piece too, which I think, Carl, you highlighted really well, is the opportunity for a broader set of actual brand partnerships in terms of working with someone like a Van Leeuwen, or just your regular CPG fare for other brands that maybe want to sell through more unique sales channels. Similar to, what I was saying before, is we're seeing this blending of what were previously distinct, purchase opportunities when it came to food delivery. So with that, there's definitely a huge opportunity. Restaurants are experimenting with it themselves, but through the lens of a ghost kitchen or, Carl's mobility platform, you actually have greater control of the operations, where maybe a traditional operator wouldn't want to take on that burden, but the ghost kitchen operator, the person within that space, is able to facilitate those sales.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just add to that 2020 became like the year of the grossrestaurant, which is restaurants.
The grossrestaurant.
I love that.
Sounds very appetizing. Come to my grossrestaurant. It's very delicious.
Local neighborhood grossrestaurant. But I don't think anyone ever would think that coffee shops would be selling a dozen eggs. But at this moment in time, people are not looking to go hit multiple places to run errands. And so combining product offerings makes a lot of sense. Right now, I know this is something that companies like Instacart and others have been doing for a long time, which is multi product offerings. And I foresee, restaurants that have alcohol being able to order a nice bottle of wine with a couple of sandwiches delivered to your house, and that's probably going to become the normal. So
great, that was awesome, guys. Really great stuff. I want to move into Q&A now because I know the audience has been patiently waiting for eagerly anticipating your answers to their burning questions. So I want to start with Kristen. How do you deal with potential cannibalization between in-house? Well, I guess you can answer this. I think Carl would also have an answer to this.
Great.
How do you deal with cannibalization between in-house virtual brands and already established ones?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's certainly something we look at. However, when we're creating the virtual brands, as I said, it's one component of what is a robust set of brands. We look to not duplicate what someone else in our kitchen might be doing, but rather increase the set of options. So, the person who really wants to order a noodle bowl, finally has that moment when that brand comes live on the platform. We really look at it as an opportunity to really grow the pot when it comes to the share of sales that, they're all pulling from.
Carl, how do you deal with that kind of curation in your vessel?
Yeah, so we definitely don't put our virtual brands alongside of a named external brand. If it's the same and competing item, that's just not cool. Number one, and number two, because we're operating these inside our kitchen vessel, if a brand were to come in and pay a visit, we want to respect people's, privacy and confidentiality and intellectual property. Though that said, the real answer is around the customer is the one who's making the choice there. We're not controlling which brands people buy. So the fact that we're operating, a Reef kitchen vessel behind the scenes, the customer says, hey, I feel like a burger tonight. And the customer scrolls through and is making burger choices based on how much they want to spend, what the offering is, what they feel like, right? And so they're really the ones making the decision, and we're agnostic to it, and they don't really know that it's coming from one place or the next. So we can have as many burger brands as we'd like, as kind of how we had the conversation around using data and tech to help us figure out exactly what people want. That's where that piece comes in. So we can sort of craft that offering, well in advance and say, this is a higher end burger market. They're interested in a $38 burger from Danielle Boulud, whereas someone might be more interested in a Shake Shack burger over here, for example.
I'll just add one quick comment. I don't think there is a ton of cannibalization. When somebody opens up Grubhub in Chicago, there's already 1,500 choices to pick from. So if there's now another new wing concept, it's 1,501. It's a very marginal cannibalization, I would say, in general.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to imagine, like for a ghost kitchen operator, they're not gonna. If I'm a prospective tenant coming into Zuul, and this is kind of separate from the question that our friend asked, Adrian. Yeah. But I'm not gonna want, if I'm making Matt's pizza and someone else come in and try to upstage me on my pizza, I'm gonna be mad if they're coming into my radius. Well, and they're coming in. We're gonna be duking it out.
I think when you go back to like physical food courts and malls and places where there used to be like 7 restaurants on a street.
Exactly.
Like you had to, as a real estate, like commercial real estate person, you have to be very aware that you're not competing and creating conflict and only give one person a taco spot. But in a facility where there's 27 kitchens and 3 of those 27 kitchens are doing tacos, I think it's less competitive with each other than you are just competing with generally tacos in Los Angeles.
Exactly. The real estate is digital at this point, right? And so then you're looking at where is your placement on the rankings from these apps. You're looking at the Instagram audience. So you have the digital real estate in someone's feed. Those are the new dynamics.
Yep. Great point.
Wow. I'm going to have to steal that one from you.
It's okay.
So a next question comes from Shaheen. Do you create brands solely for filling in gaps in the market, or do you have a goal of building a super successful fast casual brand that may rival other huge fast casual brands that are well established? Thank you all for imparting your expertise. Anyone want to answer that one?
I'll answer it. The answer is yes. Okay. No, I mean, I think we definitely, at first, virtual brands for us were about getting our platform up and running and connecting, all of our operations to one another and, building out our operating system, so to speak. And now we're to the point where we are actually, really designing and developing a whole new wave of virtual brands that we talk about internally as rivaling, many of the amazing brands that are out there, doing their thing. We've got an incredible culinary team and a great creative direction team, great marketing team that's working hard on this. So it really is it is a yes. It's both, right? And so, again, back to Alex's point, really actually, and Kristen, yours too, around the marketplace can handle a little bit more. It's about what people are looking for. If I feel like Sweetgreen, for example, and I'm a Sweetgreen customer, and I love the ingredients, the combinations, what they're going for, but I live in a place where there just isn't a Sweetgreen. Why not create a virtual brand that is very, very similar in terms of the menu offering, lots of organics, higher end, higher price point, all of that, and go after it. So I think that's a very relevant space to play in, and it's certainly one that we're looking at right now.
I would say the why not is that you're going to be viewed as competitive to restaurants. I mean, like one thing that we're really careful of is that when we're creating virtual restaurant brands, we're not going out and cooking the food ourselves. We're going into existing restaurants and layering it in on top of their businesses so that they can handle incremental order volume. And therefore, it's not competitive, but additive to those restaurants that are participating. And the second that you start to, mimic a Sweetgreen and bring it into other locations, all of a sudden Sweetgreen is not a company that's going to work with you.
So that's what I was saying before, Alex, that we don't compete with brands in a vessel or in a market. So if we were in a market where Sweetgreen wasn't, and they didn't want to go there, for example, we might have something in that market. But if we were in a market where Sweetgreen has brick and mortar locations, or we were going to do business with them, then we would not offer that offering there. So that's what I was saying before. We kind of pull the levers and say, okay, do it here, don't do it there, because you're right. We don't want to piss off any of our brands because they're really important to us, and the virtual brands gives us the flexibility to dial them up or dial them down, put them in, take them out as we need to. So it's a good catch, and it allowed me to clarify.
I think that there's an interesting kind of distinction on the language here too around super successful, fast casual. Like, how are we defining that? And many of these fast casuals, especially here in New York, when you looked at their midtown business, they had a significant share of their sales were digital only from customers that probably rarely went into the actual physical restaurant. So when we think about creating virtual brands, you're no longer dealing with the dynamic regardless where as many people were coming to a physical places before. So what, creates the brand is still, the IP, the creative, the recipes, what it says to customers and what it means when they purchase from that concept. So I think that we could see fast casual brands, continue to proliferate that have a really strong identity, similar to the ones that we've seen rise up through the 2010s, right?
I just want to shift gears a bit. Harry Campbell, the rideshare guy himself, has a question for Carl, which is kind of around the mass exodus of cities, this narrative we've been told, and I guess it's true. But
man, don't believe the hype.
Yeah, don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the hype.
Okay, I'm with you.
I mean, I was in New York last week. I live in Chicago. I have, our offices. I have a place down in Miami. I mean, is it what it was? No, but is it a ghost town with tumbleweeds? No.
Totally.
So anyway, so what's the question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Second that, Carl.
It's basically that. How has Reef's footprint or hub vision been affected by these trends with COVID? And if a lot of downtown city centers pre-COVID, that seems like a perfect mix, but post-COVID, he wasn't so sure.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, all kidding aside, we are bullish on cities, and we are doubling down on cities. And there are elements of the daytime office population that are gone for sure. They've just shifted, so it allows us, with the flexibility that we have, controlling all of these parking lots on which we're building these neighborhood hubs to simply shift as well to more urban areas, suburban areas. So it isn't a ghost town, and yes, the traffic patterns have changed. The way people get their coffee or their breakfast, the way people take their lunch, that's different. We're very fortunate that we have the ability to shift as well because our platform allows us to change on a dime. But we still see and believe in a lot of strength in the cities, and it's been a market that continues to grow for us. Certainly around the restaurants. I mean, certainly around the Reef kitchens and the food side.
Cool. I want to jump to the next question. What do you think is the real opportunity in digital food courts? Group binding or upsell?
Yeah.
I think Kristen could answer that.
Absolutely. So with Zuul Market, what's such a interesting part of what we've seen in the response in the market is that from having a digital food court or virtual food hall, how we refer to it, is that you're actually able to better unlock group demand than you would with just a single restaurant. Now, many restaurateurs know that the most profit is in the catering style operations where you're meeting large group orders for a specific delivery time. Now, those are the types of dynamics we're actually able to unlock when you look at a multi-brand online ordering experience. So we're able to set up drop-based deliveries to any point throughout Manhattan and actually facilitate a significant amount of product moving along a single courier to a specified point. Now, that's a drastically different model from traditional delivery, where you might see an average ticket of $20 and a courier that costs anywhere from $5 to $10, really just wiping out the bottom line, making the economics really difficult. So for us, where we think the real opportunity is around that group ordering for those specific points, simply because of obviously the equation around economics.
Anybody else want to chime in? Okay, so we got the final question from Vic Reddy. Vic Reddy asks, how have ghost kitchens / virtual brands maximized the value of social in the COVID era? Who has done it well? I would like Alex to answer this because I think it ties well with some of the Next Bite stuff. First, you can answer first. Everyone can answer, but I want Alex to answer first.
Sure. I mean, I said, like, when you're starting in a virtual only capacity, it's very hard to build consumer awareness unless you're doing something viral or beautiful. And you look at so far the virtual restaurants that are performing the best on social media are celebrity centered or partnered with a brand that's already doing well. Father Kel's is a great example. Hotbox, obviously one that we were a part of, but I think there are some groups that are doing it really well, like C3 and what they're doing with crispy rice and Sam's chicken. It's very Instagrammable food and pictures, the way that it arrives. It's great branding. And it's created this viral effect in the cities that it's available. So it's been able to have a great, successful social media program. I do think it's hard though it's harder to convert people from ordering from the online ordering company, the third-party marketplaces, to your own platform than it is to do vice versa. And that's why you see Giada, which is a famous sandwich virtual restaurant concept here in LA. They're doing a ton of social media pushing to Postmates and to Uber Eats, which is interesting. You see kind of the opposite happening in the brick and mortar world, where people are trying to get people off of those apps and onto their own platform. But in the virtual restaurant world, you need those partners to do the last mile delivery, and it's just odd to see virtual restaurant brands pushing people to the third party marketplaces to order. It's something that I wasn't expecting to happen.
Very funny. Almost as funny as the seeing Justin Bieber on a private jet eating crispy rice, which I just saw. I think I saw that on your Facebook, Carl, on the Neighborhood Kitchen Facebook.
Yeah, I'm sure. I thought it was pretty funny too. I thought it was really cool.
I mean,
thanks, man.
It's an Instagrammable moment and experience, not too different than when you order sugarfish and it's this unboxing experience with it's hard to not post something about it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely. I mean, the camera eats first, right? And so you gotta shoot it, you gotta post it, and then after you unbox it, it's like a jewel box, and it's exciting, and it's like, think of how your first iPhone, right? How cool that packaging was, and taking it out and you had it in your hand. It was like, man, this is something really, really different out there. I think the brands that capture that and then make it something that's worth sharing, like look at what I've just done tonight. I didn't make this food. All I did was pay for it and to buy it, and here it is. But it's an event, and you want to capture that and share it, talk about it. So, and then if it tastes great too, bonus, right? It's got to taste great. It's all love.
Yeah, I mean that is the ante to play. It's got to be delicious.
Yeah.
Yep. Because otherwise you're just angry.
Yeah.
And hungry.
Kristen, any thoughts on mouth-watering Instagram virtual strategy?
I mean, I would say it's an obvious component. Alex, I would agree. I think it's surprising to see a lot of the virtual brands push to the larger delivery players. But when you look at more maybe distributed real estate strategies where that virtual brand could be popping up in a number of ghost kitchens, in a networked effect, one of those providers might actually be able to provide that coverage. For us, we're really looking at social media as a way to communicate directly with, people who have access to the Zuul market to learn more about the brands that we're currently featuring and be able to tell those stories. Because I think what's lost in a lot of these digital platforms is the storytelling behind the brands. You can do that sometimes through your native delivery site. We've built a number of elements into the Zuul market experience, but I think that social media remains a really important part of that process of understanding a brand.
Awesome. Well, we're just coming up on the hour mark. That we went an hour and 2 years, and we covered every major hot topic in the food tech delivery landscape with three very great experts. So thank you guys for being so open and taking the time in all these different time zones that we're all in, and for bearing the virtual panel experiment that we've conquered now. And audience, this is the end of Curvivore. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something. Whether you work for one of these tech companies and you're thinking about how you're going to be building products for your customers, or whether you're on the restaurant side trying to figure out how to make sense of all this craziness with everything going on in the world, or whether you're a small business owner trying to understand what to do with your wares and how to sell them online or how to repurpose your space. So many people coming to this conference to connect for different reasons, and it's awesome. So yes, I guess I'm supposed to come to a networking thing. I'll be there for a little bit. So we're going to go to the room. We're going to all drink beers and celebrate and cheers each other through our cameras. All right. So
amazing. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you all for a great panel.
Thanks
everybody for organizing this conference, and see you on the flip.